What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of Fanduel sponsored Crunch Time. I am your host, TJ Zwarich. We got a small little baby 2-game slate on tap for NBA tonight, followed by a nice, fun Monday night football game. So don't go anywhere after Crunch Time is done because we got more content coming your way. Joined by two of the sharpest minds in the biz. First up, Tasteful Tides. Tim Buell, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we were talking about all the sports. We got football later. We got hockey tonight. We got hockey tomorrow. And then we got this putrid little 2-game slate that we have to break down.
Yeah, not a lot of value out there. Not a very exciting slate, but it's the same for everybody, right? Everybody's dealing with the same type of ugliness. So hopefully there's still going to be some ways that we can make some money. Joined as well by the Iceman, Keith Eister. How you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, fun little night here. Only 2 NBA games, but in-season tournament games. And I'm hoping, we've seen it trend a little bit this way already with the minutes and rotations, but really hoping tonight, they condense the rotations even more, as this is now single elimination bracket style. It's losing, you're done. So I think teams are really gonna play for this. The problem is, as you guys mentioned, it's really tough to pay up for stars. On DK especially, you basically get one spend, and then you're value hunting throughout the rest of your lineup. So it's a difficult slate, but like you said, everybody's playing with the same deck. We'll break it down and figure out who the good guys are to target.
First things first, we are going to start talking some FanDuel because FanDuel is, of course, our sponsor. Bet $5 on any money line, get $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First things first, like I said, let's start on FanDuel. Also, make sure you hit that like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm going to be going to you for QQ's second, but I'm going to need everybody to hit the like button before I do. And I'm going to, of course, go to the RotoGrinders live stream Discord chat for QQ's first. But let's start with a position-by-position breakdown of FanDuel for cash, then for tournaments, then DraftKings for cash, then for tournaments. But before we even get to that, Tim, why don't you give me a little breakdown of the slate?
Yeah, so in my opinion, we've got 2 really fantasy-friendly games. The obvious spot is attacking the Pacers, who I think have the worst defensive rating in all of basketball and also play at the fastest pace in all of basketball and also have the best offensive rating in all of basketball. So they have this massive 244.5 total. It's only a 5-point spread. So the Celtics are going to be the team that you want to target, but they're also going to be the most popular team to target. So it's kind of one of those things where, you're going to be building into a lot of chalk, building into a lot of similar type builds if you go heavy on the Celtics. That's going to be kind of the tricky part of the slate is how do you decipher between ownership and, how to get different in a large field GPP because, we all want to solo ship and not chop with 60 other people or something like that, which is very, very possible on a night like tonight. So, getting to you're going to have to get really uncomfortable with your value pieces. On FanDuel, it is possible to play 2 studs, but on DK, boy, is it tough. So FanDuel, it's a little bit easier to get to 2 studs. But yeah, obviously the Celtics are chalk. And then also, I think the Kings are going to be relatively popular, especially on FanDuel. So the Kings and Celtics are going to be very, very highly owned. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about really quick is that Tyrese Halliburton is not as highly owned as I thought he would be. And I think he's got 65, 70 fantasy points in him, even in this really tough matchup. So he's right off the top. I just wanted to talk about that. He's not getting as much ownership as I thought. And I really, really love him as a tournament play.
I think it's a good idea to kind of cover these games individually and talk about all of our favorites as opposed to just going the builds because again, like probably pardon me, you probably shouldn't be playing cash today. If you are, good luck. But on 2-game slate with such little value, you probably shouldn't be playing cash today. Before we even get to the individual games, Keith, do you have anything you want to add or anything you feel differently about? Because like I said, we got the time. So if there's anything for this slate as a whole, any unique strategies you're taking tonight?
I don't have much else. I think Tim broke that down really well. Agree with him that Boston is definitely the chalky team, with Sacramento picking up a little bit of ownership alongside them. The two favorites in the two games, that makes sense to me. That's what our ownership projections show. One thing that I'm definitely concentrating on is these rotations. Like Boston, we pretty much know who's going to play for Boston. Like the starters are going to play huge minutes. It's going to be Hauser and Pritchard off the bench and very little else for anyone else on the roster. Then you get to a team like New Orleans, who like McCollum has been out. Trey Murphy has only played one game all season long. We really have no idea what the back end of the Pelicans rotation is going to look like. So situations like that, and we'll obviously break it down for every single game, but I just more so than on a full slate, I'm willing to mess with minutes and things like that, like take stands on guys that are not projecting well at all and just hope that they run into a few extra minutes and things like that. So don't be afraid to mess with projections and get different types of builds. Like if you just run out the 10 best lineups or whatever, you're going to be chalky with everybody else. So definitely don't be afraid to get different.
Yep. Couldn't agree more on that in tournaments. One of the things I think I'm planning on kind of doing in tournaments to get, it's not the same case on FanDuel because where the max is 4 players, there's going to be nothing unique at all about playing 4 Celtics. That's going to be one of the most common things you can do. But on DraftKings, where I can get all the way up to 6, I actually like doing that in tournaments, just playing the maximum amount of Celtics in a lineup on a 2-game slate, thinking most people will probably get 3 to 5. And they could put up 150 points against Indiana. Like Indiana's the fastest paced team in the league and they're terrible at defense. So just playing as many of those Celtics as possible is one of the ways that I'm interested in getting on tournaments on DraftKings. But first, we'll talk about FanDuel. Tim, let's start with the Boston and Indiana game. Kind of pretend we're on crunch time here. Talk to me about Boston because the 5 starters project as 5 of the best plays on the slate. Hauser and Pritchard, I think, are totally viable tournament plays. But then after that, not really anybody else is projected for minutes. So how would you rank the starters? How interested are you in Pritchard and Hauser? And then is there anybody else you'd consider touching?
There isn't anybody else I would consider touching. That's the easy part. It'd just be the 5 starters and Hauser and Pritchard. I would rank the starters probably Tatum, White, Horford, Brown, Holiday. And then if this game blows out, I think Pritchard would make for a really strong GPP play. So he should be somebody that's in your player pool for sure if you're playing say 10 or so lineups. But there really isn't very much opportunity cost at center on this slate, which is kind of weird. So Al Horford, I think, is a very, very strong play. This is a game that he should do well in. So I like him quite a bit at 6,300.
And then if you look at Noto's core plays here for FanDuel, Derek White and Al Horford, 2 of those guys there. So we might as well kind of just plug those in right now. And then Keith, same thing for you. Are there any big disparities from what Tim said? If so, what are they? If not, feel free to move on to Indiana.
So I think Hauser is one of those guys who could run into more minutes in this spot. I could see them trying to keep up with Indiana's pace and a guy like Horford coming off the court a little bit. I also think that they could try to run Miles Turner off the court and just go with like a complete small ball lineup. So Hauser, I think his minutes range is anywhere from like 20 minutes to maybe 30 in the right game scenario. So Hauser is a guy that I want to be overweight on in tournaments and more so on DraftKings. But Luke Cornett is also really interesting. Another guy who could play 8 minutes and he could play 20 minutes. pretty good per minute as well. So like we're starving for value. Just wanted to get Cornette's name into the conversation too. A guy whose minutes are really, really difficult to project in the spot.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit, and he's somebody that I actually do have on one lineup that also includes Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser, and it kind of playing the blowout style. What about on the Indiana side?
Keith, can I just ask you one thing? What do you think the blowout rotation would be for Boston?
Let's see here. I mean, I think Banton would definitely be out there. Pritchard would be out there. I don't think they play Cornette and Keita together much. Keita would definitely be the guy I want in a blowout scenario. I'm trying to pull up the bottom of the roster.
I just think that that's something important for people to think about if they're playing multiple teams tonight. Like, who would be in the blowout rotation, especially in this game? I know it's only a 5-point spread, but Boston is they're so tough. So this could still be a blowout, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. Like Indiana kind of snuck in, and Boston was dealing with injuries. They still have Porzingis out, but like Boston's the clearly better team here. So I don't disagree with that take at all. I would say like maybe like a guy like Svi Mikhailuk, who's not even projected right now, like could get some blowout run. So if you want to add players to the pool and kind of target that type of thing, it's a two game slate. I don't think anything is crazy, but you can just click the hide unprojected and then add some minutes to any of those players. I don't think that's a crazy angle on this slate.
Yeah.
Where do we want to go from here? I don't even remember. Oh yeah, the Indiana side of things, Keith. Who do you have interested on this team? Because it's a much tougher matchup going against Boston. Like Boston, and you almost just never want to play people against. But not only is it a 2-game slate, Indiana's kind of shown throughout the year they don't give a damn who their matchup is. They're just going to run anyways, and they put up some huge totals on really strong defensive teams.
Yeah, so Halliburton is obviously an awesome play in tournaments. I don't think he enters the cash conversation because Tatum is just a little bit safer. But Halliburton is an awesome play. He is coming off of an illness. I would generally say that Halliburton has as much minutes upside as anyone on the slate, and I do think that's still the case. But just because of the illness, I wonder where his conditioning level is at completely. Like he's playing upper 30s minutes, but like I don't know if he can get up to like 42 minutes. Like it would not surprise me if Jason Tatum played 42 minutes. I'm targeting guys like Tatum, Brandon Ingram, who we'll get to specifically for that reason, that they can play just a boatload of minutes in this spot, especially if we get a competitive game down to the wire. But Halliburton missing a game with an illness there is a little bit concerning. I think he's fine and he's going to play upper 30s minutes, but just wanted to note that Miles Turner is grading out very well. He's a guy that I'll be underweight on in tournaments. Just center's not very strong on this slate, which makes it difficult. But Turner is the guy who we've seen get in foul trouble a ton. It would not surprise me to see him go well under his minutes projection and his fantasy points projection. It's not a comfortable fade, but you've got to take some stands somewhere. Turner's a guy I'm underweight on. And then the mid-range guys I think are going to be pretty popular here for Indiana. Bruce Brown looks like one of the best value plays on the slate at 5,600 here on DraftKings is where I'm looking. Let me flip over to FanDuel here real quick. 5,800 on FanDuel, very similar. Mathurin at 4,500, another one of those guys who could just see more minutes. Like he's projected for low 20s. That's generally what he plays when they're healthy, as they are. He's moved into a bench role. That raises the usage. And if he's going off and he's the guy that's keeping the game close, it wouldn't surprise me to see him at 26, 28 minutes, and he becomes such a better play if he's the one that's running into more minutes in this spot. So Mathurin, because of his usage off the bench on the second unit, love him as a tournament play and a guy I want to be well over the field on. Neesmith and Toppin are both very much in play at these prices. Toppin is another guy who's really difficult to project minutes wise. They've basically run him out of the rotation at times, and they've run him up there for like 33, 35 minutes before. So Toppin is a very difficult guy to project. He's not showing much popularity here on FanDuel, so I probably take the overweight stance on a guy like that. If you're playing the blowout angle, TJ McConnell is definitely my favorite pacer.
Yeah, I agree.
Who plays the who's gonna play the 5 if Turner gets run off the court, Keith?
Toppin.
Is it Neesmith?
Yeah, they could run Neesmith out there a little bit, but they've been running Obi at the 5 a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Either or, depending too. I think it depends a little bit on the Celtics matchup, where if Tatum is the 5 for who they're throwing out there and he's torching Toppin, maybe they pivot to Neesmith kind of thing. But I agree with Keith. I think Toppin is probably going to be the most common go-to there. It's what they've been doing so far.
Like, I think Toppin and Mathurin actually Mathurin's the guy that would jump into that small ball lineup. I think that they actually probably correlate pretty well from a minutes perspective. Like if Toppin is getting minutes at the 5, that likely means Mathurin's getting minutes at the 2. So just something to think about in a build.
100 away from getting Toppin in this lineup that I want. I guess I could pivot Herder down to Monk. We'll see. We'll see what I do with it from there. Let's go over to the New Orleans Sacramento game. New Orleans side of things. This team you're going to see ownership on Zion, on CJ, and Brandon Ingram, but it doesn't look like we're going to, and Herb Jones as well on Fanduel, where we don't have much value. Anybody outside of these starters you'd be willing to take a shot on, Tim? And how do these guys rank for you relative to the slate?
Outside of the starters for the Pelicans, probably nobody. Plenty of guys on the Kings I would play outside the starters, but I think for the most part, I'd want to come in underweight, at least on FanDuel on these Pelicans. I think because I want to prioritize Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum over Brandon Ingram and Zion. Ingram and Zion are great plays also, but I just like the Celtics so much more, and you're not really getting much of an ownership discount playing the Pelicans. So I'm going to go with the better spot and be underweight with guys like Ingram and Williamson and CJ McCollum. So I'd definitely come in underweight on the Pelicans, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I don't think that's a bad play at all. The one person I would want to maybe get overweight on because that ownership is low is Jonas Valanciunas. He'd be, I think, a very interesting tournament play. But how about for you, Tim? Are there any of these tournament guys you want to take a shot on? Like, if you're building a lot of lineups, would you throw a Jose Alvarado team in there? Or would it be mainly the expensive guys? And where do you rank them compared to the Celtics and the Kings big guns?
You said Tim. I think you meant Keith.
Yes, I did. Apologies.
Yeah. So, like, Brandon Ingram is one of my favorite plays on the slate, and it's really difficult to play him with Tatum. I do prefer Tatum. The price savings is definitely useful, but it's still hard to play them together, especially on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think you can do it pretty easily, and that's why you're seeing so much ownership on Ingram. But Ingram is one of those guys who I think could play a ton of minutes in this spot. Like 40 minutes for Ingram would not surprise me. I want to try to get Ingram and Tatum in a couple of lineups, even on DK where it's difficult. But again, you have to do some uncomfortable things. Agree with the Valanciunas call, just a guy who could be so good per minute. The minutes could get into the low 30s. They don't do it often, especially with everybody healthy. But I don't think it's out of the question for him to play like 32 minutes in this spot. Herb Jones is a nice value, another guy who has upwards mobility on the minutes. He should be the primary defender on a guy like De'Aaron Fox on the other side. So if Fox is going to run out there for 38 minutes, it wouldn't surprise me to see Herb out there for 36 or so. Trey Murphy is the other interesting name. He only played one game this season. He only played 22 minutes. I have no idea how many minutes he's playing. I have no idea what his conditioning is like, but he's a guy who can make a bunch of threes. He does a little bit peripherally as well. Like, he's a pretty good rebounder. So he's not grading out very well at all, but I do want a sprinkle or two of Trey Murphy in 150 set.
Yeah, I actually have him in one of my 3 main builds here as well. I like myself some Trey Murphy. Quickly, we'll go Sacramento, and then our favorite kind of must play for optimals for cash, and then we'll make a pivot for DraftKings, do the same, get some QQs. Who do you like on the Sacramento side of things, Keith?
Malik Monk, I think, is the first guy that jumps out just because of the price tag, particularly over here on FanDuel, coming in with massive ownership.
I never thought I'd see that. I never thought I'd see that number next to Malik Monk.
Yeah, it's not a comfortable thing for a guy coming off the bench, particularly. But he has a great usage rate with the second unit. He should play 26, 27, 28 minutes. Potentially, they could run him out there a little bit more. They are getting healthier. So, like, he could also play 25 minutes. It wouldn't surprise me with a guy like Harrison Barnes or Kevin Herter picking up a couple extra. But just the price tag is so cheap, and his usage off the bench is so good. He's a safe value. I don't know that you can. I mean, to get overweight on 74%, you basically have to lock him in. So there's that conversation. If I was building 150, I think I'd be a little bit underweight on that and pivot some of it to a guy like Herter, who's also projecting really well, projecting for a ton of ownership as well. Need him to make his shots. Fox is very much in the tournament mold that Halliburton is in. Like, De'Aaron Fox playing 40 minutes in this spot would not surprise me at all. I think he has an outstanding ceiling in this matchup. Sabonis is tough to get to. A guy that I would be underweight on in 150, I think. You just don't view him with the same ceiling as a guy like Tatum or Halliburton or even De'Aaron Fox on the same team. So I think I'd go overweight on Fox and underweight on Sabonis. Barnes is fine if you happen to have, he'd be a last piece only type for me. Just a little bit worried about the ceiling. The guy I definitely want to be overweight on is Keegan Murray, only projected for 27 minutes right now. Like, he got literally benched in the last game. Coach Brown has been trying to get him to be aggressive with his shot, and he has been aggressive with his shot. He just hasn't been making shots. If he comes out hot and starts making shots, like, Keegan Murray could run out there for 34 minutes in this spot, and nobody would be surprised. The minutes have been down because he's been struggling so much, but if he's shooting well, which is obviously racking up fantasy points, he's going to continue to run out there. He's a key young player in their rotation. They want him to succeed and be a part of their deep playoff run, they hope. So Keegan Murray, definitely a guy I want to be overweight on.
Was going to say the same thing about Keegan Murray. Trey Lyles is another interesting value play I really like today for tournaments. Tim, quickly, we got Derek White now, Horford tagged for cash games on FanDuel. Who else do you think, from a optimal or cash game standpoint, are the must plays in that type of lineup today?
So I know I said to be underweight these guys in GPPs, but cash games, Brandon Ingram, definitely 7,900, going to play a ton of minutes. He would definitely be in my cash game. I'm not playing cash tonight, but Ingram would be my next guy in, definitely. And then from the King side for cash, I'd probably go Herter and Monk. So I think that's five guys that we have on the screen now. I think that's a pretty good setup for people that want to play cash. So I am not playing cash tonight, though.
All right, I will get you to do these. I want to make sure we have time for QQs, and I do feel like that was a more valuable breakdown of the slate, especially from a tournament standpoint. But same thing, Tim, if you don't mind, on DraftKings, who are kind of your must plays for a cash game optimal style lineup today?
I'd go Tatum. I'd go White. I'd go Horford. And then I would go, oh, man, it's so tough.
I think Monk is in there as well.
Monk.
For what it's worth, for me, I would really want to get Hauser in there, but I totally understand if you land in that range, you want to get Mathurin instead. But I just would want to play as many Celtics as possible.
I just don't think you could play Hauser in cash. But
this start gives you 53.50 remaining. So you got to kind of stick right in the mid tier of Barnes, Murphy, Herb Jones, Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown's somebody you're for sure putting in there for cash games today, I think, too. And that leaves you 52.50. So if you go down to somebody like the Hauser or Mathurin, allows you to pay up. But if not, you do still have the Herb Joneses, the top ends, the Murphys, the Barnes, for those type of guys for your last three positions here to work itself out. Let's hit QQs here. And then we will get you out of here right at lock, because we do have the pre-lock show coming immediately after, starting in the RotoGrinders Discord live stream chat. QQ, FanDuel, GPP, Keith, Jalen Brown and Delano Banton, or Keegan Murray and Trey Murphy?
That's the second one by a mile.
Yeah, me too. FanDuel GPP, keeping it with you, Keith. So Tim can, just in case he's got to adjust any lineup since I made a monologue there. Neesmith or Mathurin, FanDuel GPP?
I think Mathurin has more upside, so I'd go that route.
Pivoting to YouTube, I see, Tim, you answered some of these questions earlier, so that's going to help us quite a bit here. Thoughts on Isaiah Jackson on FanDuel? Do you think he's playable in a tournament?
We haven't. I mean, he's fine. Depends on how many lineups you're making, but he's only projected for 8 minutes, so I think you can do better. He probably would be in that blowout rotation though. So if you want to take a shot, if you're making like 10 or so lineups.
Favorite under 4K player on FanDuel, Lyles or Alvarado? I think that's got to be Lyles by a fairly wide margin. He's much safer. Yeah. I think you can only go Alvarado if you're running 150. Maybe you can mix him in there a little bit in that setting. But Steven Smith says, watch Mr. McGee win someone a GPP today. On a 2-game slate, there are crazier things that have happened, I think. Like JaVale McGee's sort of like the ultimate Andre Drummond play, where it's like maybe so he plays 12 minutes. And if he does, he could get 20 points and win you a slate. So I don't think if you're running a ton of lineups, I honestly don't think it's like stupid. I actually think there could be some merit. Tim, favorite studs, FanDuel single entry and FanDuel GPP?
Yeah, it's Halliburton and Tatum.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I see you answered Brian Ross's question, Hauser or Mathurin on FanDuel. You say Mathurin. I'm going to be honest. I like Hauser. I just think that Boston team is going to put up so many points tonight. FanDuel, Ingram. I'll give this to you, Keith. Ingram, White, and Brown, or Hallie, Hauser, and Jones?
That's got to be Bruce Brown, right?
Yeah.
And then what was the second three?
Hallie, Hauser, and Jones.
I'll go the first one.
QQ, Tim, my current build has Halliburton, including him. I have 2 players for each team tonight. Is that a decent idea, or should I try for a bigger stack?
I like the idea of a bigger stack.
Card Shark says, sorry, but refuse to take any advice from a grown man with dolls. Bad call. I've won about $80,000 in the last 2 weeks, so that's probably going to be your loss on that one, Card Shark. Jalen Brown or Brandon Ingram in a FanDuel GPP, Keith?
Ingram for me.
That'll do it for QQ's 1 minute before lock. Make sure to get your lineups in, and make sure you also stay with us because we got pre-lock coming up with Chop and Squirrel. Speaking of great DFS players, Chop and Squirrel breaking down the single entry game for us here. And if you're playing some NFL tonight, the new beta version of our NFL lineup building tool, SimLabs, is here. Now with FanDuel compatibility, use SimLabs to generate DFS lineups through the power of simulation. It combines data from every aspect of the slate to turn out lineups that match your preferences. In just a few clicks, you can have hundreds of well-built correlated lineups ready to go for whatever contest type you're playing. Be sure to check out the link in our description for more info while we're still free in beta. And we also have the props and pick'em package out now. Great deals on it. The experts at the RotoGrinders team take our premium stats and comb through the market for any inefficiencies. Through mid-November in NBA, NFL, and NHL, we're up 38 units on our expert picks. Using our model, you can easily see which lines are off, where to find them, and how likely the prop will hit based on our tool. Check out the link in our description for more. Keith, you're on the scores and odds teams putting out stuff there. Tim, you're always putting out stuff for NHL. Is there either of the two of you, like any big props the two of you like tonight?
For NBA, or I don't know. I
know NHL tonight. In NHL in general, feel free to toss.
Well, the game that I bet just started, unfortunately. So yeah. But I do like the over. Is it? Oh, man, I can't remember now. Whatever Halliburton's assists are.
Yeah, I like that too. That is always a good one. Keith, how about you?
was looking up to make sure I credit who wrote it up, but reading this, it was Kyle Murray, who's super sharp dude over there on Scores and Odds. Brandon Ingram over 26.5 points and assists. Like McCollum is back, but Ingram is still getting assists, and the line has actually moved to 27.5. I still bet this. Like I didn't see it in time when Kyle wrote it up, so I bet it at over 27.5 as well. That number is still out there, but Brandon Ingram over 27.5 points and assists is my favorite.
In less than 10 minutes, we got the pre-lock crew Chop and Squirrel coming in. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out and join us for that one as well. On behalf of myself, Keith, Tim, and the whole RotoGrinders team, thank you so much for tuning in today. And we'll hopefully see you again in a few minutes. Peace.